Hey everyone, Oscar Duran here from Black Sailboat. Here with my brother Mikey. Say what's up, Mikey.
What's up?
We are proud to be shooting here from Fremont, Nebraska, home of the Heartland.
Fifth and Broad.
Fifth and Broad, FremontUSA.com. That's a shout out to one of my partners here in town. I think he owns the web domain. I don't know if it's a static site or not, but
Someone should. If he doesn't own it, go buy it because it's going to take off.
It's going to take off. Well, Fremont USA is the place to be.
Heck yeah.
Today we are going to go off script a little bit. We're not abandoning our old model, but we're like, hey, we are married to doing this podcast, so we thought we'd change it up a little bit. We're still going to be talking about housing community development, especially in the context of the local scene. But today, Mike, why don't you tell them what we're going to do?
Well, I mean, basically the backstory is that we had a number of articles to choose from, and that Oscar had presented, and there were a couple, to be frank, that I was a little bit concerned about, being kind of conflicting to my professional career.
And to defend my brother here, we have said before, this is kind of like a side project for us. We love doing this. We're passionate about it, but
Yeah.
we both have jobs and we got to watch what we say on certain things.
Yeah, and I was kind of thinking like, well, let's pull together like the common themes of these articles into something that's more conceptual or more theoretical even. And one of the common themes is actually something that is a kind of a sociological theory of my partner Oscar's here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the difference between mobilizing and organizing, right?
Well, no, for sure. And you know what? It's funny because I was like, I don't know when I got hung up on this idea. Was it 2 years ago, a year and a half ago?
About, yeah.
Right. Well, so here's the trick. Like, I even gave presentations at like the YP Summit, Changemaker conferences at Jaws, and like these little different things about like what it is I do. And people used to tell me like, hey, Oscar, you're an community organizer. That's so dope. And I think we even did a podcast like 3 years ago where I think we talked about community organizing.
Yeah.
And it's funny.
Hey, you're a $12 an hour job. So dope.
Right?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, you know what? Here's a long story short. I realized that I'm not a community organizer.
No, community organizing and the joke I'm making about how nonprofits hire community organizers for X reason. You could have a different opinion on what that means, but no, you're not a community organizer.
No, but I do got to be frank in saying that I don't think there's anything wrong with community. In fact, the people that I'm inspired by happen to be community organizers.
Yeah, it's just in the current context, it's like this like basic job that we got to get as we grow our nonprofit. We got to get a community organizer. We got to get a volunteer coordinator. You know, it's just like
you do. You better get that collective impact project rolling. No. Okay. Really though, I'm not talking smack on it because that's a lot of the same work we do, right?
Right.
You got to get the community side. So here's what I realized. I looked back at my resume and of projects that I was most proud of. And I looked at the ones that I failed at most miserably. And actually, the thing I saw consistent was that I was working with small groups of people.
in a good way, right?
In an exceptional way.
Yeah.
In fact, I realized the majority of the things I do in community development and housing work and church work now, secular work, I'm working with small, deep relationships built on strong essences of collective efficacy.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I realized after reading a few books, wait a minute, that's not organizing.
Right. So we should maybe backtrack or start. Maybe we're starting now. This organizing versus mobilizing thing, we should probably try to give some definition to. Let me throw one out there.
Okay, let's do it.
And you react to it and change it.
Yeah.
As you see fit.
Okay.
For me, like, mobilizing has a very direct goal in the sense of something that might resemble what you would call an initiative, right? Organizing is all of these people have this, what we've presumed or assumed to be a shared problem. Let's bring them together and find out what they want to do. And then I think where the problem is there's really no back end resources for making any of that change
in our current climate.
Yeah, whereas mobilizing is
or
like,
at least not a lot.
Yeah, like we have this kind of like, we have the goal. We're gonna get some people who are on board with the goal, and then we're gonna go do it.
I think we're gonna end up talking about the articles we try to avoid today.
I'm sure. Well, let's do it. We're here. We're recording.
Not in a bad way, but I mean, it's important only because it's all related. So here's the thing. Our first two podcasts were on housing. And today we're going to talk about associations, right? Which are that's our bread and butter. That's what me and Mikey are two, as modern climate would say, we're two community organizers, right? That's what I think other people have called us that.
I'm sure they have, yeah. I don't think we would call ourselves that, but I'm sure they have.
No, for sure. Well, I think 3 years ago I called myself that.
Yeah.
And maybe 3 years ago you did too. Until
I mean, I guess I would say that's not how we define ourselves currently.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
So again, to me, and so what's the difference? One, the difference is the amount of people you're working with. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I look back at my work in Deer Park, obviously, right? That's where I got my foot in the ground. That's where I got my experience. That's where I took my blows. That's where I got my praises. I mean, that's where I started it all. Mm-hmm. And Deer Park, when I came in, was already a successful association.
Words. Got them down.
I know. But I mean, successful in what avenue, though, right?
Successful in a certain context.
I can tell you the neighborhood meetings average 25 to 35 people. I can tell some people would say that's not successful. Yeah. Some people would say that's great. I would tell you, though, that were they representative of the majority of the population in the neighborhood?
No.
Probably not, right? Yeah. Obviously the people that are involved in associations, in our own experience, more affluent and educated, formally educated populations. Right. And what I saw, though, was that's one layer, but then the layer that was doing all the work, and not all the work, but like the core, like driving the initiative, like you mentioned, was a team of like 5 people.
Right.
And like, I'm going to say 5 dope people.
Yeah.
I had the same experience when I started doing with the South Omaha Neighborhood Alliance, like the bigger representative of multiple organizations. Like you had some incredible, influential, ambitious, energetic, passionate, generous, human, loving people leading these groups. And, and they got together and they were able to do something, right?
Yeah. And so I guess there's, in that scenario, there's kind of 2 directions that it could take. Like, one, like, you've said to me before, like, the person who doesn't show up to do anything but attaches themselves to the organization is as much of an asset as everyone else, right?
Yeah. Oh, they totally are.
Because they're going to say, like, well, yeah, I wasn't a part of Cambridge Neighborhood Association. Like, I wasn't there on the day, but I consider myself a part of that neighborhood association. And when it happened, I'm going to tell people, like, yeah, we did that.
Yeah, we did that. Yeah,
whether or not I was involved with the committee, the subcommittee, like the volunteer day, the promotion of it, whether or not I was involved with that, I'm going to say, like, yeah, we did that. Yeah. And so you consider them as much of an asset as you do everyone else, right?
Oh, I mean, I believe my experience in this work is like the number one job of an association, of a neighborhood,
right,
is to build internal and external identity.
Yeah, and
so not what I intend to talk about today, which is
another
very passionate topic of mine.
Yeah.
How many times have we spoken? Have I talked about?
I'm sure. Yeah.
Over the last 10 years, 6 years that we've known each other.
But to keep things on track, I guess, like the other side of that is where you have 5, 7 really dedicated people of 30, 40, 50, right? It's like, how much should those 5 really dedicated people think or care about what the rest of the group that's not going to take the next step into action thinks about?
Let's just put it in context. Like if I could, let's take a moment. Deer Park. Let's just use Deer Park as an example, and I'm gonna give really loose numbers that were close to accurate. Maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Deer Park has 3,800 households, roughly just shy of 10,000 residents. Mm-hmm. Big neighborhood. Neighborhood associations get to set their own boundaries in our NMSA. If you're listing in a different area,
right? The
city doesn't get in that. That's cool. I get it. But the boundaries, like it used to be 3 different neighborhood associations, expanded to cover territory because read Robert Putnam, he'll tell you why. Mm-hmm. The big deal is that they have that large of a population, and then you get to the neighborhood association. The neighborhood association, Deer Park, had 280 members, roughly. Mm-hmm. Okay, but then you get to another layer of how many people are actively engaged in 1, projects,
right,
2, events, and 3, the meeting, the business, the organization, right? Mm-hmm. And those numbers fluctuate in my experience. But we really look at it as as community organizers. Your whole idea is the community meeting, right? That's your metric for success. I really believe that as an organizer. What's the mass? If we're going to look at Deer Park, those 9 to 10,000 people, what's the largest population and voice you were able to get represented? That's my understanding as an organizer.
Oh yeah, people who are there in the time you wanted them to be there. Like they're physically in the space that you set up. Like we're going to organize these people and they're going to go to this thing. And then your metric for success is like who's there. And that could be the neighborhood meeting or like, hey, we're going to get together and we're going to talk about this thing, right? And I think that's what I mean. Like that's a different thing than like having this like initiative based thing where like, oh, we're going to get this house torn down or whatever it is, right? So not to interrupt, I'm just saying that I agree with you in that, the metric is totally wrong in terms of what the common like understanding of what organizing is, I think.
Well, yeah, and then to me, it's like, I think by a lot of people's means of success, I started feeling like I was failing in the word.
For sure.
Because in neighborhood work, you're like, man, we only had 9 people come to the meeting tonight sometimes. And and then as a neighborhood leader, if you got 9 people at your meeting, you failed, right? That's a stigma.
Yeah.
Right? Like you were not doing good.
Yeah.
They're like, man, we only had 9 people.
Right.
And after a while, here's what I learned. I can get 50 people to a meeting, but it's a lot of work to get 50 people to a meeting. Like you can't just do it regularly. You gotta handhold people. You gotta hold their hands, call them the night before. If they don't go to the meeting, you gotta call them afterwards and be like, oh Mike, hey, I missed you last night. Sorry we missed you. Don't make them feel bad. Be like, I missed you though.
Right.
You got to do that work if you really want to get a mass amount of people to the meeting. And in our current cultural American climate, I do believe that.
Well, there's a little bit of why sprinkled in there. You know, we used to talk about like these successful scenarios of a neighborhood meeting, and then it's like you realize like you don't really know. You know, you don't know what the thing you wanted is until you have it, and sometimes you were wrong. You know, I think like you don't like you don't know what it means to have 75 people at a meeting until they're there, and you're realize, like, fuck, bleep that out. Sorry,
bleep that out. Dang, we're not supposed to swear. We do better. And actually,
we'll bleep that out.
I am gonna say Mikey never swears.
I know, but I'm like that was a genuine emotion. You're like, oh, what?
No, it is.
Yeah.
No, but to your point though, I agree with you because what's the largest neighborhood meeting you've had?
That I've chaired?
Yeah.
Like
single neighborhood.
Like
not multi-neighborhood.
Like 38 or something like that. Yeah.
82. I'm not bragging. I'm going to tell you it was one of the worst.
I'm
and
sure.
It was probably that meeting that I was like, Yeah, I don't want to do this again.
Yeah, you don't. Of course you don't. Yeah.
Because here's the fact. I had 82 people. It wasn't 82 members of the South Omaha Neighborhood Alliance.
No.
It wasn't 82 members of the Deer Park Neighborhood Association.
Nope.
It was my core 35 and then like 30 people that were really upset about something that was going on.
Yeah, of course. But if you make attendance a measure of success, then you'll get into this world where it becomes topic based. You're like, well, what's the most attractive topic?
Yeah.
What's controversial? And you're like, well, guess what? The Deer Park Neighborhood Association is going to talk about the waste collection contract.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, who are all these 50 people that are here?
No, and we got to be clear. We are not talking. We love Deer Park. I'm not wearing a Deer Park shirt right now.
It's a reference point.
I believe it. It's a reference point for sure. Gary, if you're listening, I love you. Thank you for teaching me everything. Shout out to Gary. You're the man. But so this is what I'm saying, though. You brought up a fantastic point in this work. That is the measure of success as a neighborhood association, though.
Unfortunately.
That's one of the main ones.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of dope stuff, but, maybe that's not fair. External identity-wise, I think after a while, Deer Park had a great reputation in South Omaha. After a lot of the things that I was able to bring to the table to purposefully, intentionally build external identity. So like people were like, that wasn't by accident. That was by design, right? Seven would call and be like, hey, we want to talk about a shooting in the area. I'm like, nope, we're not doing that. And they're like, we need a neighborhood. I was like, nobody in the neighborhood association will do a story for you about somebody getting shot in the neighborhood. They're like, why?
Yeah.
Because we're in East Omaha. When somebody hears about somebody getting shot in East Omaha, at this time, people didn't know all the different neighborhoods in Midtown, South Omaha, North Omaha, like they do now.
Right.
It's a totally different environment, which is dope. It's growing. Like people want to care about their neighborhood names, which is a great environment you're in now, right? Mm-hmm. I can tell you when I used to give these healthy neighborhood classes like 8 years ago, and I'd ask a group of young professionals what their neighborhoods were.
Yeah.
And even that lived in East Omaha just said South or North Omaha.
Yeah. So I think you could make a Venn diagram, right? And the left side is like it's like the way that neighborhood association leaders are claiming to be representatives, right? And the right side is like people like a media organization or even like a public works department that's like, we need neighborhood input, right? And then like the middle is where they come together. Like,
I mean, as part of that process, you might get uninvited because they want to. That happened to me.
Yeah, who cares about? Yeah. But it's like that's just a two-way street that's going the same way that just butts its head into each other because it becomes super easy for a neighborhood association for the leadership to like be like, well, yeah, we speak for the neighborhood. Don't come in here if you don't talk to us. And then the other people are like, well, we've got this checklist on our list of things we got to do for our public outreach, and one of them is talk to the neighborhood. So, oh yeah, we'll go talk to these three old white people.
Well, and this is the thing too. I think a lot of so maybe I don't know what I am yet. I mean, because then as you're drawing to, there are a lot of things that I do that are very neighborhood organizer-ish, right? Like sure. I will say I'm really good at getting people to answer their doors that will never respond to a mailer. They will not go to a neighborhood meeting. Usually they won't answer the door for people, but I'm going to knock on their door a few times and they're going to open it for me. So, because I'm going to keep knocking on their door.
Well, you can be and then you can be a victim of your own success too, because the people who have kind of pure intentions for getting involved with a neighborhood organization will get in, and then it's not that you want to be organizing versus mobilizing, but it might be that you're just trying to maintain something. Like, and here's the thing, I think we could have a different discussion. I'm going to say this once a podcast. Like, we could get deeper into something, but like at the level where we are of what an association is, like the added pressure you have for new leadership, the more kind of an institution you become. It's like you're taking a lot of like volunteer effort into just maintaining what the institution was, you know. And it's like, oh, this organization has great meetings. We got to keep having great meetings. And it's like, well, who cares if you have great meetings? Like, what are you doing?
I like having.
Yeah, everyone does, but what does it do though? And how do you see it?
You're right,
you know?
and I think it's a matter of like. So then it gets back to being like, I remember when I realized, and I don't think it's right or wrong, and I think both roles are important. What I'm trying to say is, and I'm not the only one to say this. There are master's thesis, doctoral dissertations. There's books about the differences that touch on the differences of community organizing versus community mobilizing. So I'm not claiming to have thought of this, but what I'm really pushing is that regardless of this content that's out there and scholars that have researched it and written it, the unfortunate part is, at least that I think, a lot of the people that are writing and writing that stuff aren't applied researchers. I don't know that. But no. At least not in the sense that the applied researchers that I know aren't reading their books. But they're going to go pick up a book by Jane Jacobs. Right?
Of course they are.
They're going to read Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone. Nothing against it. They're going to know who Richard Florida's Creative Class is. Love all those things. Right. But ask him who Robert Fisher is. You know what I mean? Ask him who Saul Alinsky is. Or you know what I mean? Like, there's different ideas that we talk about when we're talking about the differences of organizing and mobilizing. And the reality is, I remember when I realized that, oh, wow, here I thought for the last decade of doing this work, I was organizing, and I realized I was mobilizing. Meaning that, again, here's the definition. To me, I'm working with a small, tight-knit people, group of people, and we get GSD. You know, we get stuff done. I'm trying not to swear.
Well, you're in the weeds, though, right? Like, in the cliche sense. You're doing it. You're with the people, right? Like, you're doing it, and it's like, shout out to you. Like, if you have the patience and like the kind of like tolerance to go through, to get a bachelor's, to get a master's. Like, it's not saying it's nothing against that to say that those people don't always understand when they come in.
No, we need them. Everybody, it takes all of us to make the field better.
Yeah, exactly.
But in fact, too, and also to the people that are organizing, like really organizing, I think that's the end goal. I think that's the end goal of community development, is like, you want to get to where you have these highly intelligent and influential groups of people in their communities that say, hey, we are very localized, and no, we are not okay with you dictating how our communities look, whether it's positive or negative, and we're not going to let crime deviate. We're going to be willing to volunteer on the weekends. Like, we're talking about the opposite of community lamentation, right? We're that's the ideal of community work, not just in our country.
Right.
Every group of, that's anthropological studies, like groups of people organizing for a common good, right?
Right.
But now, you know, without diving deep into topics of social capital, we're focusing on community lamentation. It's more that we just have so many few people to work with. And the end of the day is, me and Mike say that a lot, we just don't have the time to move the needle. And for me, so here's what I could say. If I could say it like approach-wise, a person that's pro-mobilizing, if you're trying to decide, you're new to community development, am I an organizer or mobilizer? If you're a guy that'd be like, I don't got time to a meeting, we got to get some stuff done. I hate going to volunteer meeting when we're just meeting to talk. Like, I want to know what I need to do. You're probably a mobilizer. But the other end of being like, hey guys, slow down. Only 4 of y'all are making decisions for a bunch of people. Slow down. We need more input.
Right.
You're probably more prone to being an organizer. And actually, I gave 2 very beautiful, dramatized versions of it for a reason.
Right.
They're both well-intended. And all I'm saying is, in the communities I've at least worked with, I've been working in communities that are very socially or economically disenfranchised, and I hate saying socially abandoned, but plagued by multi-generations of disinvestment, that there has been urban apathy. I mean, community lamentation. People
Yeah.
I remember when I first worked with my first neighborhood in North Omaha, and I thought I was going to be able to kill it. And then I realized, like, what is a study you want to do? This university came in, the students, and polled people on the same things you're asking 3 years ago, and they never did nothing.
Yeah, it's bullshit. Sorry, I bleeped that out again.
Dang, you got two bleeps.
So we're gonna get pulled from iTunes this week. It's not.
You gotta buzz it. Will they? If we bleep it,
we'll find out.
You're gonna have to tag it explicit.
Probably,
Dang
yeah.
it.
Sorry. Anyways, well, these are close topics to my heart, and it's the disinvestment, but then it's also like an institutionalized or like a systemic problem of like, well, why is there continued disinvestment in this area? And it's bigger than that, but that can lead to a bunch of perceptions, like from the inside, like really like, and from the outside, like these two different perceptions of what both sides are, and that changes a lot of things. And the people who you kind of mentioned, like you have to have like the time, like you've got to make it to this meeting, you got to make it to that meeting, and it's like, well, why does that even matter? Like I don't care anymore about like talking negatively about associations. Like,
no, for sure.
The current state of them is like not good, right? And so it's
but there's hope, right? And so
of course there is, but that is theoretical in some aspect, right?
But then you compare our MSA to Minneapolis, Portland,
right?
You know, two of the articles I wanted to reference today, they're going full circle where they have been very proactively community organizing, right? Neighborhood organizing, and trying to do consensus building. That's what community organizing is, consensus building. But the reality is, and this is the hard thing I've experienced in this work, and it's not bad necessarily, it's human nature, but most neighbors care about the pothole on their street. They care about the 2 street lights that don't work.
Yeah. In the alley.
They care about their alley that keeps getting tagged.
Right.
They care about their retaining wall. And and this isn't bad. It's just the reality. There is more of those people, and there are some people that say, we also care about our business district. We also care about our park. And then there's more people that say, hey, we care about our entire city. And then it takes all of us to make the world go right. And I think community development and neighborhood development specifically, like we're on a continuum. So the neighborhoods I've worked in, I'm not in Minneapolis. You know, neighborhood associations are on the decline. That's a fact in our MSA, right? At least in Omaha. And when I started doing neighborhood work, here's the example. There were 26 formalized neighborhood organizations in South Omaha. When I left, there was 21. I don't know how many there are now. And organized in the sense like active is a very loose term.
Right.
Some of those 21 only met once a year. And we use meetings as our measure of activeness.
Well, activeness means different things. Honestly, depending on like what it means to the city or what your funding is, right? Minneapolis is a totally different thing because they're like consistently funding in a large amount, so they have like these different requirements. In Omaha, it's very easy to pass yourself as an active neighborhood association, and there's no requirement in anyone's mind for representation, unless you're an ideologue, right? Like. That's it. Right?
I'm not going to ask you to name any people, but we both know there are neighborhood leaders that represent neighborhood associations of 1 or 2 people.
Sometimes one.
There's a few.
Couple times one.
Couple times we know too.
Yeah.
You know, and the people will be like, "Oh, I know this neighborhood association so dope." I'm like, "Oh, you mean John or Jane Smith?" Yeah.
That person who emailed the planning department.
Yeah.
But that's the thing though, right? Because there's like an inherent like allure to like the power of representing. So like you keep attracting these same people, and whatever. A lot of times they're similar people, right? Because of how attractive it is. And then you have the other side. Like I said, you have like people coming into it, and it's like, we talked to that neighborhood. We partnered with them. We asked them like, hey, do you have any homeowners over the age of 62 that make less than 35,000 a year, and they need a new roof, and it's like, what the are you doing?
Thanks for not bleeping again.
Pause.
Though, it brings me full back circle though, because I think about those neighborhoods that are being represented by a single or two, and even in Deer Park's case, right? Like, you can say, oh, it's easy for you to say that, but Deer Park's 10,000 residents represented by a formal, active organization of 50 people.
Right.
That's true. They happen to be good people. They happen to be exceptional people, though. The hard part is when you look at a larger area, a neighborhood that's like 1.5 square miles, or even less, like a 3/4 square mile. We're talking like 300 parcels.
That's how it should be.
Yeah, they definitely should be smaller, but neighborhood associations they've been dwindling since, the 60s, 70s, right? I mean, all not just them, all volunteer-based associations are. The churches we're facing the same thing in church work right now.
But why would the future look anything like the 60s and 70s? I mean, I think that's that's the side that I come out. I mean, we have, like, I'm not going to name it, one of the most progressive kind of neighborhood associations in Omaha right now started in a racially biased way, So it's like, who cares? Like, what are you trying to live up to? Get rid of the name, get rid of the neighborhood association thing. There's power in formalizing, but it's like, who cares about this association thing? It has to look different. It's going to look different.
I think it does need to look different, and this is where, and I have some colleagues that I respect extremely amount, and we're like, you're pro association or anti association? What do you think I am, Mike? I mean, really.
I mean, I think you're probably pro.
I'm definitely pro.
But it's for a certain reason, yeah.
But I'm pro the ideal. Mm-hmm. The ideal of what we can be, and our right to, and I will say this, our right to organize and our right to mobilize. That is a right of being free. And what I fear is that as community lamentation continues to grow, and I've seen it, I don't want to get in trouble.
Let's do it.
They do the lead abatement projects and they dump them in a certain part of the city, where people don't know that they can organize or mobilize. And I don't think they do that intentionally, but by nature, they're able to do it there because people don't say anything. Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm saying though, like, that's the challenge. That's the biggest challenge of this work. It's that, like, I'm scared, and maybe I'm a worrier, but I'm like, we can't forget that this is part of being human. I mean, a group of people can stand up to, I love Amazon. I'll never give up on Amazon. But a group of people can stand up to Jeff, and I'm going to call you Jeff. I mean, you're never going to listen to this. But, Jeff.
Shots fired.
I was going to say something worse. But smaller group of people can stand up to something like that and say, hey, we're not going to do this in our community. We've seen it happen even in a local context. Hey, we don't want this pharmacy in this intersection. You're out. Right. Hey, we don't want this lower income housing project in here. NIMBY.
You're right. Well, wait, hold on. That's NIMBYism is the current fucking state of neighborhood associations. We'll bleep that out again. I'm sorry.
Slow your roll.
So it's separate things. Like, the power of people does not have to be completely tied to neighborhood associations, to structure, because if you tie everything to a current structure, you run into a lot of problems, from representation problems to NIMBY problems to racial problems to levels of income problems, all of these things that are inclusive. You can't hold on to current power structures too much if you want to advance something. You got to take what's there and take the ideals and make something new if something new needs to be made. So I agree with you that we have to preserve, like, our right and the power of ourselves to come together and do something. And I guess I don't care if it looks like neighborhood associations or not. And because and I don't mean this to project on you, but
you look at what current associations, and I know you're not hating on them, but you look at like, I made a joke, was it earlier today? I don't know. We're like, could you imagine if Microsoft gave, you know, or in Baltimore, they just did a big neighborhoods grants program. Like what was it, 20 million? Mm-hmm. Can you imagine if they gave 20 million to neighborhood groups? And I'm like, oh man, we'd have raised beds everywhere.
Little free libraries.
I have little free libraries. I'm not hating on them. They're good things.
No,
but I'm just
good
saying,
things are good things by themselves.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, in terms of moving the needle, and what I learned through my work, through my tenure in this work, is that we can do bigger stuff, but then it becomes the balance of, you also know I'm very anti associations becoming institutionalized. Right. And what I mean by that is like, just go look up the ABCD Institute. I mean, long story short, associations are volunteers, institutions have employees, right? Yeah. And there's tons of associations across the country that have said, let's start a CDC. Let's have some staff. We need a $2.1 million budget or a $300,000 budget. But what happens is once you do that, you lose your singular why, which was to build some consensus and represent the volunteer, the neighbor. Mm-hmm. Because now you're keeping up with, hey, how do you keep the doors open? How do you keep the salaries paid for?
And it changes. And so if you've institutionalized like together, like this thing about Minneapolis and this Minneapolis 2020 plan, now 2040 plan. Is that what it is?
Well, they had a 2040, but apparently that didn't go over.
And then now it's 2020, right?
2020,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's like that's a different world than we live in, and that's probably a different world than a lot of places live in. And it's like
we're not there.
No,
I bet the neighborhood scene in reality ain't much different than it is here. What they're doing program-wise is, I mean, really, I just don't think it's that much different. We have dope leaders in Omaha. But, I mean, here I am, though. City of Fremont has in their long-range plan to develop identified neighborhoods. We don't have a single organized neighborhood association in Fremont yet. Mm-mm. But, I mean, I just met with, NIFA today, and we're going to talk about how we're going to get that going, how I'm going to build a new neighborhood association. But the whole idea, and you know me, it's like, we're going to start when I'm talking about, I'm deep into the emotional intelligence of the leadership.
Right.
And how we make sure that they're going to be reflective of the population, not themselves.
That's right. And if your job as like person who is attracted to this thing is to like maintain something, then you're not going to get to that level of capacity. So you need further investment besides just that, right? Like Omaha has like 150 neighborhood associations. If you're like, let's give all of them $1 million, we can't. Like that's not the right thing to do.
So I got to tell you though, we were at 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And this has been a great conversation. At the start of, you're going to continue to hear about this dialogue a lot. I talk a lot about housing, but it's housing and volunteer-based associations. That's everything I do. That's everything Mike's starting to do too. And he's definitely volunteer-based associations, but once you do that so much, you start figuring out that you're into housing. I mean, right?
Yeah.
You're in housing work, whether you knew it or not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so related. But in essence of respecting our viewers, we always wanted to try to get all of these under 40 minutes. So I think it's time for what Mike likes to call the weekly hypothetical.
Oh. Are you ready?
I don't.
Oh, do you have one?
I'm definitely going to ask you one because you stole mine last week.
Oh, yeah, do it. You're the weekly hypothetical.
Weekly hypothetical
presenter this week.
You get a genie, and a genie says, Mike, I'm going to give you one wish to make neighborhoods better. Just one. It's got to be simple. One simple thing. You get one wish. That's it.
Organizations or like a neighborhood by itself? Just to make a neighborhood better?
Yeah, to make neighborhoods. You want all neighborhoods to do better. What would it be?
I think it's different if it was one neighborhood or if it's like one wish to make all neighborhoods better.
Answer whichever one you'd like.
If it was one wish to make all neighborhoods better, it would be to have a kind of comprehensive, frequent, reliable transit option that connected all of the neighborhoods within the city. And free to ride also.
Dang. Maybe the week ahead of the show shouldn't be about the work.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I never made it that. But
I know you didn't, so I'm not going to answer it. I'm gonna ask you another weekly hypothetical. Okay. All right. You get to hang out with one person who's passed and gone, and you get to have a conversation with them for 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
That's all you get. 10 minutes. Who would it be, and what do you want to speak on?
Who's passed?
Any duration back. Any.
I would want.
Assuming you can even speak their language.
Yeah. I would want to talk to Martin Luther King Jr. And have a similar conversation that we've had today in terms of community organizing, joint message, kind of like playing the game, if you will, and just like what steps do we take for the most change to happen. It's really easy to find outrage in things, but outrage either has to have a ton of people outraged or have some people kind of come together, and then like that's where leadership comes in, and that's what I would want to talk to Martin Luther King Jr. about.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Well, I think you stole who I would talk about, and I think you know that you did.
What? You're gonna do MLK Jr.?
You know I do. But you know who else I'm gonna go? I'm gonna go with it. Like, I might even pick this person first. I'm gonna go with Leonardo da Vinci. And 10 minutes, I'm gonna ask him, one, how did he find the creativity to keep coming up with things? And two is, I really wanted to tell me the metrics of how much stuff he tried versus how much stuff that worked.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I would love to have that talk about it. And then I think the last thing would talk in 10 minutes. And this is a very fast 10-minute conversation. Right. With a philosopher probably wouldn't. He would just introduce himself for 10 minutes.
I thought you were going to say a fellow inventor. That's what
a fellow inventor. No, I'm not.
I was like, whoa.
I wish. I wish I was a Renaissance man. Well, we got mopeds and stuff and stuff, but not. I'm definitely no Leonardo da Vinci.
I don't think you had to say that. But go ahead.
Well, you kind of put me in an awkward spot. I know I didn't have to. Now I came across kind of pretentious. But that's who I picked. So, hey, everybody, thanks for listening in today. Community mobilizing versus organizing. Hey, Mikey, are you an organizer or mobilizer?
Mobilizer.
Yeah, I'm a mobilizer too. We love you, organizers. It takes both of us. And if you're somewhere in between or you're not even quite there yet, either way, we love everything you do just for living. Keep loving our communities. Thanks for finding our podcast, and tune in next week. Peace.
Peace.